and welcome to Peak Life. Today we're going to be talking about the police crash reconstruction team, and joining me is Officer Watterson and Officer Lawrence. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So what is the goal of the reconstruction team?
So the goal is to essentially put a puzzle together. When we come out to crashes, sometimes we have lots of witnesses, which is always good. We have video footage, and it makes it sometimes easy to put the puzzle back together to figure out how the crash happened. But sometimes there's not anybody, so we have to use the evidence that's on scene, like tire tracks or tire marks, to determine speed and how things move, and that's how we put the puzzle back together to figure out what happened.
And to get answers for the family members, because if someone is dead, they want to know how this happened or why it happened. So we want to get those answers for the family members.
And if someone is at fault
Yes,
for that as well.
correct.
So do officers need a specific training to be a part of the team?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They start off in basic training, so it's a basic crash course. It's 2 weeks long. And then once you get that, you kind of learn the basics. So we have obviously technology and tools that we use nowadays, but we start out through the basic class with a tape measure, like 4 or 5 tape measures, and that's how you actually diagram the scene, is with just those types of things. There's an advanced class that you go to after that, which then you become a lead investigator on the team, so that you'll be the lead investigator and the one really spearheading the investigation on that. And then, of course, there's all kinds of different trainings that they offer. We have total station training, which is the machine that we use to shoot precise points on how to gather physical evidence and where vehicles were and where debris is and tire marks and gouges in the roadway and things of that nature. And then, of course, they offer hundreds of thousands of different things to get more specific into something like pedestrians or bicyclists, motorcycles, or even commercial motor vehicles, because
So
each
those
one
are
of
all
those,
different.
they're all different.
Okay.
Yeah, so we try to have a wide variety on the team. We have officers that are specialized in those types of trainings, but not everybody is. So we try to spread it out so that way we get the most training for everybody. So everybody has kind of like their own little specialty.
So how many people approximately are on the team?
10?
10?
10, yep.
10 officers, and this is collateral. This is not their only job.
Right.
That's correct.
So when would the team be summoned or called out to a crash scene?
So anytime there's a serious injury or a fatality, we would go out to investigate it.
And that's something I know, like a lot of people, if you're driving down the road and you know that there's an accident and traffic is really backed up, they're like, why is it taking so long? And it's because it's so important to be able to find those answers for loved ones, like you said, and just for other purposes as well. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe all the processes that you go through during that may take up the time that folks are waiting?
Once the crash occurs, it becomes a crime scene because there is a fatality. So that's why it takes so long. It's just not a normal crash where we can tow the vehicles away. We have lots of evidence that we have to document for that case so that we can get those answers and possible charges for the person who is responsible. So,
Right, absolutely. Like Officer Watterson was saying, is that most of the time, regular patrol isn't necessarily a advanced crash investigator. So some of the things that they look for on a typical crash, like damage to a vehicle or tire marks, is really all they're looking for. Their main concern is anyone injured? If you're not injured, is your car movable? Let's get it off the roadway if it is, just because those are the safety issues that they have in a regular crash. In a fatality crash or a crash with major injuries where someone possibly could die from, there's a little bit more that go into it, and we've been trained specially to look for little tiny, minute evidence facts to determine what could have caused that accident. So that's why we close it down for so long. Sometimes it works out really fast, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's during the daytime at rush hour traffic, and sometimes it's at night where there's nobody out on the roadway and it's not that much of a problem to shut down the road for such a long road for such a long time.
But of course it is very important that you do so. Give me an example, and you talked a little bit before the interview about an instance where I think the vehicle which had jumped the ditch, or can you talk in generic terms about what's involved in actually determining what has happened and how you do that with the equipment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So with like examples of airborne vehicles, we can determine the vault of a vehicle and how far they go and where they landed, and we can determine speed from that. Sometimes we can determine a lot of information and provide a lot of answers, and sometimes we just can't, just because of other factors that there's no witnesses, nobody saw anything, things like that. As technology evolves, it gives us more information. There's a little black box in your vehicle that has been deemed necessary in your vehicle since 2013 that a lot of people don't know. That it's called the airbag control module, and that records a lot of information. Sometimes it works out really well for us, and we can gather that data and actually determine what your speed was before a crash, and sometimes it doesn't. If it's an older model, sometimes it has the information, sometimes it doesn't. So those little things like that help determine that. With a vault, it's about angles and the approach and where it goes from and how far it goes and where it lands, and we can determine what the speed is from somebody that went airborne during a crash.
That's just amazing, the technology. And I think you were talking as well about the use of someone's cell phone may be able to give you some clues.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what we do with cell phones is we'll do GPS pings and locations and stuff like that. And we can determine the route that they were going prior to the crash to determine not necessarily if they're wrong, but to determine if if that's an issue for their story or what they're saying actually happened.
And a lot of times I would think that like if you're in an accident, you might be in shock, or total recall of what happened may not be what actually happened. So that would help.
Absolutely. There's scientific facts and studies out there that says a crash happens in 1/10 of a second and it's over. So 1/10 of a second, the crash happens and it's over. So it's that fast.
Right.
So to try to figure out all the questions that we might ask you in that 1/10 of a second, you may not know all of them or may not remember all of them because it just happened so fast. But that's why all the other things are important. Marks on the roadway, marks in the grass, all those things are important. We try to figure all that stuff out so that we can determine the exact cause or answer as many questions as we can.
So how many calls would you say in a given week, or does it vary depending on season or time of day?
Well, like last year with COVID, there were not a lot of people driving. There were not a lot of bars open, so we didn't have as many DUI crashes or anything like that. This year, we've had quite an uptick in them with people on their cell phones, drinking and driving, not paying, and speeding. So we've had quite a bit more this year as compared to last year.
Which is unfortunate.
Yes,
I'm sure.
it is very unfortunate.
So how important are the findings to the team? You talked a little bit about that as far as for loved ones and stuff like that. Once you have completed the crash investigation, what happens to those findings?
So it's very important we work with the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth attorney will usually come out to the scene to assist us in any charges that we may secure for the person who caused the crash. But it's very important for the loved ones, because even if it's just a single vehicle crash, they want to know why it happened or how it happened.
Absolutely.
Or could it have been prevented or anything like that. So whether it's a single vehicle crash or a crash with 5 cars, we want to investigate it the same way so that we have those answers for the family members.
Well, thank you guys so much. This has been interesting because I know a lot of people wonder, like I said before, like if they're sitting in traffic, why is it taking so long? But you said it's a crime scene.
Right.
So that makes total sense.
Right.
So very interesting information. I appreciate you both joining me today.
Thank you
for having us.
Yep.
Well, that does it for this edition of Peak Life, and we'll see you next time.